For almost a century, we've been arguing about who got to America first. Europeans, Asians, some lost civilization. Archaeologists have been digging. Anthropologists have been measuring skulls. Geneticists have been comparing DNA. But there was one problem. We only had stone tools. No bodies, no bones, no DNA. Just spear points, scraped hide, fire pits. The Clovis people left behind thousands of artifacts across North America. Beautiful fluted spear points, sophisticated tools, evidence of organized hunting. But no human remains for 13,000 years. The people who made these tools were ghosts. And then in 1968, two construction workers in Montana were using a front-end loader to collect gravel on private land. The Anzick family ranch near Wilsall. They hit something hard. A collapsed rock shelter, hidden beneath layers of sediment. And inside, the skeleton of a baby, buried with over 115 stone and antler tools, all covered in red ochre, a ceremonial burial. This infant, between 1 and 2 years old, was buried 2,600 years ago, at the end of the Clovis period, and it remains, to this day, the only Clovis burial ever discovered, the only human skeleton associated with Clovis tools, the only Clovis person we've ever found. For 46 years after the discovery, those bones sat in a museum until 2014, when scientists finally extracted DNA from the child's teeth. And what they found changed everything we thought we knew about the first Americans. It answered questions archaeologists had been debating for a century. And it destroyed one of the most controversial theories in American prehistory. Let me tell you what that DNA revealed. The bones were cataloged, photographed, shipped to the Peter the Great Museum of Anthropology. Wait, wrong story. Let me start over. When those construction workers found the infant in 1968, they didn't realize what they'd discovered. Ben Hargis and Calvin Sarver were just collecting sandstone gravel. The front-end loader hit something. They stopped, started digging by hand. And there, beneath layers of rock, was a child's skull, fragmented. 28 cranial pieces, a left clavicle, several ribs, all dusted with red ochre, a mineral pigment used in burial ceremonies across ancient cultures worldwide. Around the bones, more than 115 artifacts, 100 stone tools, bifaces, projectile points, flake tools, 15 antler rods, at least one made from elk antler, all covered in that same red ochre. The stone points were distinctive, large, thin, bifacially flaked. And at the base, a flute, a channel carved into the stone to help attach the point to a spear shaft. This was the signature of Clovis technology, the oldest widespread culture in North America, dating from 13,000 to 12,600 years ago. The Anzicks, the family who owned the ranch, kept the remains. For decades, researchers studied them, measured them, analyzed them. But ancient DNA technology didn't exist yet, so the bones sat, waiting. While archaeologists argued about where the Clovis people came from, here's where it gets controversial. Most scientists believe the Clovis people came from Asia, crossing from Siberia into Alaska over a land bridge called Beringia. This bridge existed during the last ice age, when sea levels were 300 feet lower than today. People walked from Asia into North America, maybe 15,000 years ago, then moved south as the ice sheets retreated, and eventually developed the Clovis technology around 13,000 years ago. This was the consensus, the mainstream theory. But in 1999, two archaeologists proposed something radical. Dennis Stanford from the Smithsonian Institution and Bruce Bradley from the University of Exeter. They published what became known as the Solutrean Hypothesis. Their argument was simple. Look at these stone points. On the left, Solutrean points from France and Spain, dating to 21,000 years ago. On the right, Clovis points from North America, dating to 13,000 years ago. Look at the shape. Look at the flaking technique. They're similar. Stanford and Bradley argued that people from southwestern Europe, the Solutrean culture, migrated to North America during the last glacial maximum. Not across Beringia from the west, but across the Atlantic Ocean from the east, following the edge of the ice sheet, hunting marine mammals, using boats, until they reached North America around 2,000 years ago. And that's where Clovis technology came from. Not Asia, Europe. Now think about what this means. If the Solutrean hypothesis is true, then the first Americans weren't Asian. They were European, white, Caucasian. The hypothesis became wildly popular in certain circles. It fit a narrative some people desperately wanted to believe. That Europeans discovered America first, 15,000 years before Columbus, 7,000 years before the Bering Land Bridge. But most archaeologists were skeptical because there were problems, big problems. First, the time gap. Solutrean culture existed 20,000 to 17,000 years ago. Clovis culture appeared 13,000 years ago. That's a 4,000 to 8,000 year gap. If Solutreans brought this technology to America, where is it during those missing millennia? Second, the technology isn't actually the same. Yes, both cultures used bifacial flaking. Yes, both made thin spear points. But the details are different. Clovis points have that distinctive flute at the base. Solutrean points don't. The napping techniques, the way stone is shaped, are different. The sizes are different. It's like saying a fork and a spoon are the same because they're both eating utensils. Third, there's no evidence of Solutrean seafaring. None. Zero. No boats, no maritime tools, no coastal adaptation. The Solutrean people lived inland in France and Spain. There's no archaeological evidence they had the technology to cross the Atlantic through pack ice in the middle of an ice age. Fourth, the geography doesn't work. If Solutreans crossed the Atlantic and landed on the East Coast, you'd expect the oldest Clovis sites to be in the east, but they're not. The earliest Clovis sites are in the south and west. Texas, New Mexico, Arizona. The technology spread from south to north, not from east to west. Despite all these problems, the Solutrean hypothesis persisted. Because we didn't have DNA, we couldn't prove where the Clovis people came from. Until 2014. Sarah Anzick, a molecular biologist, grew up on that Montana ranch. She was 2 years old when those construction workers found the infant burial. The bones were discovered on her family's land. And for decades, she thought about those bones. She became a geneticist, studied ancient DNA, and she wondered, could we sequence the Clovis child's genome? There was a problem, though. The Kennewick man controversy. In 1996, a 9,400-year-old skeleton was found in Washington state. Scientists wanted to study it, but Native American tribes claimed it under NAGPRA, the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act. They wanted it reburied. The case went to court. It became ugly, divisive, scientists versus Native communities. Sarah Anzick didn't want that. So she did something different. She reached out to Montana tribes, the Crow, the Blackfeet, others, and she asked for their input. We have this child. We want to extract DNA. It will destroy some material. What do you think? The response was mixed. No consensus. Some tribes were interested, some were cautious. Sarah temporarily gave up the project. But eventually, with careful consultation, she moved forward. She partnered with Eske Willerslev and Morten Rasmussen, ancient DNA experts from the University of Copenhagen, world-class geneticists. In 2013, they flew to Montana, accessed the remains, selected bone fragments from the skull and ribs, and began the painstaking process of DNA extraction. Ancient DNA is incredibly difficult to work with. After 12,600 years, most DNA is gone, degraded by bacteria, broken down by the environment. But there's one place where DNA survives longer than anywhere else: the teeth, the pulp inside teeth, protected by a hard enamel. If someone has bacteria in their bloodstream when they die, it gets trapped in the dental pulp, and that bacterial DNA can survive for thousands of years. The team also sampled bone, using specialized drills, taking tiny amounts, just milligrams. Then came the sequencing. Months of work, assembling millions of tiny DNA fragments, like a jigsaw puzzle where 99% of the pieces are missing. The DNA was highly variable. Some extracts had 0.5% human DNA. Others had 28%. It depended on the microenvironment where each bone fragment was buried. But slowly, piece by piece, they reconstructed the child's genome. 14.4x coverage, meaning they sequenced each part of the genome an average of 14 times to make sure they got it right. And in February 2014, they published their findings in the journal Nature, one of the most prestigious scientific journals in the world. The title of the paper: The Genome of a Late Pleistocene Human from a Clovis Burial Site in Western Montana. And the results were shocking. First, the basics. The Anzick child was a boy, between 12 and 18 months old when he died. We don't know how he died. No signs of trauma, no disease markers, just death in infancy, common in prehistoric times. His mtDNA, mitochondrial DNA inherited from his mother, belonged to haplogroup D4H3A, a founder haplogroup, one of the original lineages that came to America. His Y chromosome, inherited from his father, was QL54, specifically QL54, XM3. This is ancestral to QM3, the most common Y chromosome haplogroup in Native Americans today. So genetically, this child carried the original American lineages. But here's where it gets interesting. The researchers compared the Anzick child's genome to 143 modern populations worldwide, including 52 Native American populations from Canada, Central America, South America. Unfortunately, none from the United States, because U.S. Native American tribes have historically been reluctant to provide DNA samples, for good reason, given the history of exploitation. So there's a big blank spot on the genetic map where the U.S. should be. But even without U.S. data, the results were crystal clear. The Anzick child was more closely related to Native Americans than to any other group worldwide. Not Europeans, not Middle Easterners, not Africans, Native Americans. The Anzick family is directly ancestral to so many peoples in the Americas, S.K. Willerslev said. That's astonishing. About 80% of modern Native Americans, especially those in Central and South America, are direct descendants of the Anzick child's people. Direct descendants. This means the Clovis people didn't disappear. They didn't get replaced by later migrants. They are the ancestors of Native Americans today. But the DNA revealed something else, something that connects the Anzick child to Siberia. In 2013, a year before the Anzick genome was published, scientists sequenced the DNA of another ancient child, the Malta boy, found near Lake Baikal in Siberia. He died 24,000 years ago. His DNA was strange. His mtDNA and Y chromosome were haplogroups U and R, not found in Native Americans. But his autosomal DNA, the DNA from all his chromosomes, told a different story. The Malta boy shared genetic ancestry with both Europeans and Native Americans. He was part of an ancient Siberian population, from the Upper Paleolithic, a population that contributed genes to both groups. And here's the connection. The Anzick child shares about 1/3 of his genes with the Malta boy, same as all modern Native Americans. This means the encounter between East Asians and this ancient Siberian population happened before the Clovis period, probably around 24,000 years ago, in Beringia, or somewhere in northeastern Asia. Two populations met, interbred, formed a new population, and that population eventually crossed into America. The Anzick child, and all Native Americans, are descended from that admixture, Asian ancestry mixed with ancient northern Eurasian ancestry, but not European. The genetic distance between the Anzick child and modern Europeans is huge. The farthest genetic distance, Southern Europe, the Near East, the exact region where the Solutrean culture existed. In agreement with previous archaeological and genetic studies, the researchers wrote, our genome analysis refutes the possibility that Clovis originated via a European Solutrean migration to the Americas. Refutes, not suggests against. Refutes. The Solutrean hypothesis is dead. The Clovis people came from Asia, not Europe. But the DNA revealed one more mystery, one that nobody expected. The Anzick child is more closely related to Native Americans in Central and South America than to Native Americans in Canada. Why? If the Clovis people came from the north through Alaska, you'd expect them to be more closely related to northern populations, but they're not. The researchers proposed an explanation. At some point before the Clovis period, probably around 15,000 years ago, the ancestral population split into two groups. One group stayed north, the other moved south. The southern group, the Anzick child's ancestors, became the Clovis people. They spread rapidly across North America, down into Central America, all the way to South America. By 13,000 years ago, there's evidence of Clovis technology in Texas, New Mexico, Montana, and Clovis-like fishtail points appear in South America, all the way to Tierra del Fuego, a rapid expansion in just a few hundred years. Meanwhile, the northern group stayed in Canada and Alaska, and over time, they received additional gene flow from Asia, more waves of migration from Siberia, which made them genetically more distant from the Anzick child. This explains the north-south divide, but it also means there was a deep divergence in Native American populations. That predates the Clovis culture. The first Americans weren't just one wave of migration. It was more complex than that. Multiple groups, multiple movements. The Clovis people were part of that story, but not the whole story. Now here's what this means for Native American communities. Shane Doyle, a historian from the Apsaluke Crow tribe, worked with the research team. He helped coordinate consultations with Montana tribes. And when the DNA results came out, he said something powerful. This discovery proves something that tribal people have never doubted. We've been here since time immemorial. And all the ancient artifacts located within our homelands are remnants from our direct ancestors for decades. Some people try to argue that Native Americans were recent arrivals, that earlier populations lived in America and were replaced, that modern Native Americans had no connection to ancient Paleo-Indians. This argument was used in court cases to deny tribal claims to ancient remains, to deny repatriation, to deny sovereignty. But the Anzick DNA proves that's false. Native Americans are descended from the first Americans, direct, unbroken lineage. The child buried 12,600 years ago in Montana is the ancestor of people living in Central and South America today. That's not speculation. That's DNA. In June 2014, the Anzick child was reburied in a ceremony on the Anzick family ranch. Representatives from 11 Montana tribes attended: the Crow, the Blackfeet, the Northern Cheyenne, others. Sarah Anzick, the molecular biologist who grew up on that land, stood with tribal leaders, and they returned the child to the earth in the Shields River Valley, where he was found. The 125 artifacts, the stone points, and antler tools. Those remain at the Montana Historical Society in Helena, preserved, studied, protected. But the child himself is home. Let me put this in perspective. For 46 years, from 1968 to 2014, we had the only Clovis burial ever found. The only human remains from the most important archaeological culture in North America. And we couldn't answer basic questions. Where did these people come from? What happened to them? Who are they related to? Now we know. They came from Asia, through Beringia, part of an ancient admixture between East Asians and Siberians. They spread rapidly across the Americas within a few centuries. And they're the direct ancestors of most Native Americans today. The Solutrean Hypothesis, the idea that Europeans got here first, is dead. Not debatable, not controversial, dead. The genetic evidence is overwhelming, but there's still so much we don't know. Why did the Anzick child's people split from northern populations? When exactly did Clovis technology develop? Were there people in America before Clovis? Yes, probably. Sites like Paisley Caves in Oregon suggest humans were here 14,000 years ago, maybe earlier. But Clovis, with its distinctive technology, represents the first widespread culture, the first we can track across an entire continent. And now, thanks to DNA from one child, we finally understand where they came from. Here's what should fascinate you. This child died 12,600 years ago, during a period of massive climate change. The Ice Age was ending. Ice sheets were retreating. Sea levels were rising. Megafauna were going extinct. Mammoths, mastodons, giant ground sloths. The Clovis people were specialized hunters. Their spear points were designed to kill large game. And when that game disappeared, Clovis technology disappeared with it. By 12,600 years ago, when the Anzick child was buried, the Clovis culture was ending. Within a century, those distinctive fluted points vanished from the archaeological record, replaced by different technologies, different strategies. But the people didn't disappear. They adapted, they survived, they thrived. Their descendants are alive today. 80% of Native Americans, from Mexico to Chile, carry the genetic legacy of the Anzick child's people. That's 200 to 300 million people, all descended from that ancient population. And here's the final twist. That DNA, from a child who died 2,600 years ago, settled one of the biggest debates in American archaeology. It proved Native Americans are indigenous to the Americas. It refuted the Solutrean Hypothesis. It connected ancient Siberians to modern Native Americans, all from a burial discovered by accident, by construction workers collecting gravel on a Montana ranch. If that front-end loader had dug 3 feet to the left, we might never have found him. The only Clovis burial, the only Clovis DNA, the only direct genetic link to the first Americans. One child, 12,600 years ago. His DNA changed everything. So the next time someone tells you the Americas were settled by Europeans, or that Native Americans aren't really indigenous, or that the Clovis people disappeared without a trace, remember the Anzick child, buried in Montana with 125 tools covered in red ochre. His DNA is the proof. The first Americans came from Asia, and their descendants are still here. That's not a theory. That's not a hypothesis. That's science. If we got the origin of the first Americans wrong for a century, based on stone tool comparisons and skull measurements, what else are we getting wrong about human migration? What other ancient mysteries are waiting for DNA to solve? Drop your theories in the comments. What ancient burial do you think will rewrite history next? And if you want more DNA discoveries that changed everything, hit that subscribe button, because we're just getting started.